everyone, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome to today's session. We'll be continuing from where we stopped working with CDK, AWS CDK. Today we will be deploying our CDK application that we started last week. If you were not with us last week, no need to worry. We only created the basic CDK project using CDK init. You may want to check out the recap of last week on my dev page, but essentially we bootstrapped AWS CDK. We initialized the project using CDK init. We are using the TypeScript language, but you can also use whatever you want. And we learned a little bit about what is going on in the bootstrapping and how CloudFormation is related to CDK. This week we'll be continuing from where we stopped, like I said, and here I have opened two tabs, one on the CDK construct and the other on CDK stacks. I think it's important for us to be very familiar with at least these two concepts in CDK before we continue. If you had some time, you may have also come across like other core concepts in CDK. Here we have like the different programming languages that CDK supports right now, or that supports CDK. I'm not sure, whichever way it goes, yeah. But there are other concepts that you can get yourself familiar with. The main ones that we would be touching are stacks and constructs. There are also CDK stages that we would come to see, yeah. But yeah, let's take it one after the other. So I have my terminal open here. I will navigate to my project directory. I think it was hello CDK. Yes, and I will open my Visual Studio Code editor in this directory, just so we have everything ready to go. I should also make this bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, so this is the state of our project. Yeah, I think let me open the terminal here. I also like to have this open here just in case. It's the same, the same hello CDK directory in this terminal as the other one, but it's easier to work together here if we are building a project. So yes, before we continue, we'll of course be using our getting started tutorial. I have that. We'll be using our getting started tutorial that we were deploying from last week. But before we continue, I just want us to run through the constructs and the stacks together so that we're all on the same page. Yeah, so what exactly are CDK constructs? Before we continue, I want to say that a stack is a construct. It's a construct. But yes, constructs are the basic building blocks of AWS CDK applications, and you're going to be using it at different levels in different projects that you're working with that has CDK. You'll always have to use constructs. The very basic level of a construct is directly representing like a CloudFormation resource. So there are different levels of a CDK construct. You can look at the construct like just as a class in object-oriented programming. It's a class that you import into your project that you want to deploy. You can create your own constructs there are already constructs that are in the CDK library that we are using. You can design your own custom constructs. It's just look at it like the blocks that you use in building together your CDK project. So most of everything that you're working with is a construct in one way or the other. Yeah. So all the classes you're using in CDK, think of them as constructs. But I'll show you something. I mentioned last week, at least I think I did mention that you see all of them usually have the same kind of structure. All the things, all the classes we're using and all the objects we are going to be working with, they have the same kind of structure. That's the structure of a construct. Here, not here, I'm coming. Where will I go? Let me see. Just sleep. Okay. Yes, so you see this kind of structure that they have the scope, ID, and then parameters. Like this is where you know whether it's a construct or it's usually following this same pattern in all the things that we're going to be doing in CDK. You declare the scope, you write the ID of whatever you're working with, whether the stack you are deploying. This is a CDK stack, yeah, and you can see it extends the CDK stack. But you see, a stack is a construct, and you can add your props as you go. But I mean, we'll be exploring that in detail. But yes, so using constructs, there's the AWS construct library. You can have a look at it here. There's a whole documentation, but coming the constructs library documentation. You can see the construct module, but essentially it takes you to the API reference and you're able to see all the different constructs by their level. That's what I want to show you here. I'm not sure if okay. Let me see if I'll be able to get to it here. How to initialize a construct, the scope of construct. I'm coming. I really want us to. This is not what I'm. To take us a lot of next to get to where we want to. Nah, we're not going to go through all that next. But in the CDK library, we will be able to see it in our, let's go construct hub. Let's see all the different, these are the construct libraries that have been built. I want to see the very basic original one. Yes, so these are, let me see, I'm sure, okay, we're in the latest one. These are a lot of constructs that you can see on the side here. A lot of constructs. Like these ones are the constructs. These are other stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot of constructs that come already prepackaged that you don't need to start designing your own constructs from the start. But remember, I said there are different levels of the constructs. Yes. The base one level of the construct, you would see the CFN, wherever you see CFN custom resource, CFN element, CFN hook. This is like a CloudFormation resource directly. So if you create something like this in your CDK application, it's a construct you are creating, yes, but it is coming. There's so much more than CFN stack. These are all constructs. Yeah, I'm coming. This is not. But working with infrastructure as code in any of the tools we're going to be using, maybe you choose to work with CDK, Terraform, Ansible, name it down the line, you would need to be referencing documentation a lot, because all the providers, all these libraries already have predefined resources that you want to deploy in AWS, and you need to figure out which one is it, where is it, and then get started. So a construct, there's level 1 construct, CFN resources. I showed you some CFN resources that we were using. These are the lowest level constructs. It's like defining a very manual S3 buckets resource, a CFN bucket in your CDK code. I mean, that's not the goal here, but you know that even if you get to the point where you need to manually define, like, block things, you have that level of would I say abstraction, even though there's no abstraction here, I would say, but yes, to your taste. Then we have the level 2 constructs. These ones are known as curated constructs. They've already been developed by the CDK team. So it's like, okay, you want to, for instance, I'm giving an example here, like maybe you want to deploy a VPC. When we did that manually with the CLI, we literally deployed a very empty VPC without NAT gateway or route tables, or like virtually nothing. You had to deploy this resource, then start plugging all the basic things that you want to it. But a curated construct like this level 2 construct would help you put together all the important details needed to get this particular resource deployed properly in the first place. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So if you want to deploy, the example they gave here is an S3 bucket, for instance. Deploying this S3 bucket in the level 2 construct should be able to allow you to add like important details about your S3 buckets while deploying that. The level 3 construct are patterns. You may find yourself working a lot with level 3 constructs, especially when they meet the use case that you want to deploy. So simple architectural solutions or designs that are already tested and known, they are called architectural patterns. That, you want to deploy I'll give an example. I know one, but I'm not sure it's a very appropriate one here. Like, okay, let me just say we all know how to deploy things via console, yes. So if you want to deploy a web application, like a 3-tier web application, you usually have a database, your server for your web, then you have the front, maybe load balancer, depends on what you're deploying. But when it's already established that a web application is always deployed in this particular manner, then it becomes quite a standard, a pattern, that this is how this thing is usually deployed, like following best practices, and it becomes a pattern that you can easily just get here, deploy 3-tier web application. So you find a pattern here, and you're able to pull that and just deploy this pattern very easily without manually or trying to piece in the different moving bits together by yourself. We will see these different types of constructs when we are okay, this is a pattern here. This is a pattern now. Application load balanced Fargate service. So there's Amazon Fargates, like it's for managing like containerized applications and all that. But here there's already a pattern to deploy Fargate service that is having load balancers that is able to balance the traffic to different Fargate service and have your containers deployed in it and all that. So this is already pieced together, the best practice for deploying an application load balanced Fargate service already created and added in the CDK here. So you will get to see patterns like this, and when needed, when it matches your use case, it's best to use them instead of trying to piece things together yourself. So my advice would be to start from level 3 constructs. If you don't find what you're looking for, go down to level 2 constructs. If you don't find what you're looking for, then go down to level 1 construct, which I have not had to do since all the time I've been working with CDK. I mean, it's not so long anyway, but at least I have worked with CDK projects in like production environments, like larger scale levels, and I have not had a custom problem that needs such a custom solution of using level 1 constructs, like to manipulate them. So okay, yes, this is details on how the construct is composed and initializing it. So you remember I mentioned that every time you want to initialize a construct, you would state the scope. Is usually a construct class also, because most of what we are working with is a construct, remember. So you state the scope that is going to be initialized in, and an ID is a string that you define. Mostly you want to use some kind of naming pattern for your application so that it's coherent. So you can have a variable that is maybe your project name or something, and then you add it and build on it for your ID for all the resources you're going to be building in your project. And then the props I showed you in the code, we have it here. The scope is a construct type, and then you have the ID and then the props that you're adding for your construct. That's how you initialize the construct. And yes, so all these things, all the interacting with it, the stack and everything, we will get to see them down the line. So there are examples of working with the different constructs here in the documentation. If you're interested, you can go with it, but I won't be going deep into all those different how to use the constructs, from the construct hub that we looked at here, with all the different providers created by the community and all that. These are open source CDK libraries. And now let's touch on the stack. Okay, this is still, okay, this is libraries. That's the one on the stack. Yeah, CDK stacks. So now that we understand constructs, we know that our stack is a construct, yeah, and also our stack directly maps to a CloudFormation stack behind the scene. I'm going to walk you through deploying your CDK stack, what we're working with here, yes, but it's important to understand what and why, how the whole thing works. So the stack is a construct. You see here, the example we have in our code also matches this. It's a stack, and you see the constructor, the scope is still like a construct type and all that. And you initialize your stack the same way you initialize a construct. You see here, they say you define a stack by extending or inheriting from the stack construct. The following example is a common pattern, yeah, define a CDK stack in a separate file. So these are examples here, and let me see if there's anything else that I need to point out before we can move on. This is the stack. We have two stacks created here, and yeah, the stack API. Okay, remember, everything we're working with is still interacting with some API behind the scene. I said that the CDK library API is not the same with the AWS API. You know, we had to install these two different command line, the CLI, what they call this thing. We had to do two different CLI installations for them anyway. But yes, all these things are important, but you won't be working with everything from the get-go. You don't need to cram everything. Some things that are important, you know, okay, your stack region, your stack account, there are ways for you to get dependencies, like, okay, you're building different stacks, you want this one to deploy before this other one is deployed because maybe you need something from that one and all. It's all possible for you to define all those things. This is the detail on working with stacks. You can go through it if you want, but other than that, I'll be continuing now, and we'll be moving on with our tutorial that we're following. So welcome back. Here's where we stopped last week. We stopped at list the CDK stacks in your app. Last week, we created the project, configured the environment, bootstrapped the AWS environment in our terminal, and then we went to the console and we saw everything that was set up with the CDK bootstrap. Remember, the CDK bootstrap is not the CDK project you are working with, but whenever you're trying to deploy AWS resources using CDK to an application, to an environment, an AWS environment for the first time, you need to bootstrap, you need to run CDK bootstrap. CDK needs some permissions, some resources to be working in your environment, and that CDK bootstrap runs the command that deploys everything that CDK needs to work in your environment from the get-go. Now, we'll be continuing with listing the CDK stacks in our application. We've already done that, and you should have only one stack. You can try it again just to make sure that we are all on the same page. I am here and I run CDK list. I should have okay, yes, I still haven't. Let me just do sudo coming. You shouldn't have this issue. It's just a me thing. Let me see. CDK list. Oh no, sudo CDK list should work better. Okay, so I have only one stack here in my application, and you also should have only one stack in your application. Here we have defining our function. So what exactly are we deploying? You would be interested in knowing what the configuration or the applications that we're deploying is. Let's go back to the about. We are deploying a serverless application. So here you see that the application consists of a Lambda function that returns a hello world message when it's invoked. The function will be invoked through the function URL, and it will return a hello world whenever it's called. Now, this is a very simple application. We don't have a lot of moving parts, but an AWS Lambda function is a serverless function. AWS Lambda is AWS serverless solution that enables you to run like compute, run commands, or deploy an application, build an API backend without building servers or containers or anything like that. So in my Lambda function, I could use different languages. My Lambda function could be a Python function, it could be a JavaScript function, it could be like there are different languages that Lambda supports. That's another thing you can look into when you're interested in serverless deployment. But ours is simple TypeScript, I believe, and we will configure this function to be deployed in our CDK application, and it will be live. So that's what we're deploying in our application. Very simple, you see. So back to our tutorial. We're defining our Lambda function to do exactly what we want it to do. So our Lambda function is TypeScript, like I said. Here you can see the JavaScript equivalent of a Lambda function, Java, C#, Go. It's, have fun, decide what you want to work with. But yes, TypeScript. So we would import the AWS Lambda module from the AWS construct library, and we would use the function level 2 construct. This is what this construct documentation looks like. I really wish there's something I want. Okay, I think maybe my screen is just not big enough. Okay, yes, now you can see everything. I wanted to have this on the side for you to see here. There's a lot of different CDK library stuff that you could explore. Notice, I don't know if you can see all the stuff on the side here. All this, I don't know, you see where my arrow is? In the CDK library, you'll be able to see all the different what do I call it, all the different constructs that you have access to using in your application. So this function is what we're going to be using, and it is a lambda function. So back to our tutorial. I'm going to be okay, this is the code. I know we can copy it and paste, but I think it's good to walk you through what we are doing so you understand what this does. I know serverless application deployment is not the, or I could copy it actually and then just show you as we walk through the code. So we're going to be putting it in our lib hello cdk stack.ts, and yeah, you can see this place is still empty right now, but I'm going to replace this with the code and then I will walk you through it. I'll explain what everything does here. So firstly, we are importing CDK, like everything from our CDK library. You know, this makes them available in our environment. We are importing construct, only construct from construct. The difference here, I don't know if you're familiar with TypeScript, I wouldn't need to explain this, but instead of loading everything from construct, we just select what we want from here, and here we are emptying this entire thing in our execution scope, in our scope, for us to have access to them. And this is the part where we import the lambda module. So here you see AWS CDK lib, AWS lambda. Virtually every AWS service will be referred to like this when you need something from them. So if I want to import something from S3, I'll probably write AWS-S3. Or if I need something from Systems Manager, I will write AWS-SSM or System Manager or Secret Manager. It depends on the documentation on that. As you can see here, that's it. Here you can see different ways: AWS CDK lib, AWS app integrations, like this kind of pattern that you are seeing here is where it lies. So AWS CDK lib, the service that you are working with, and then what exactly you need inside that service. Okay, so that's what is happening for us here. We imported lambda, AWS serverless solution, and then we defined our CDK stack. We have only one stack, hello CDK stack. You should already have it in your environment before, but this is the only new code that was added, the part where we define the lambda function resource. So we declare the stack, and this is the initialization of the stack. The scope is construct. No, we've not yet called it. It's where we are calling this. This is just the definition. It's where we are calling it that will pass in the scope, which is a construct also, where it's going to be deployed, and the ID of our stack when we're calling it for deployment, the props that we're passing to it if we need any props, think of properties, and then we define our lambda function resource. So here it's named my function. This is a variable. You could name it anything you want, but just make sure whenever you need to use it, you use the correct variable. And here is the declaration, or the it's not declaration, the calling, sorry, not this, the initialization of this function, where we pass in the variables that we want it to be. So remember, this function is also a construct that we are using, and in our tutorial we were reminded that this is a level 2 construct. It's easy for you to differentiate them over time. When you start to see them, you differentiate them easily by how they are named. When you have a simple name like this, that is just the resource, this is a lambda function. When you have a simple name like this, you can guess accurately that is a level 2. When you have something that has CFN in front of it, like CFN lambda function, that CFN refers to cloud formation, and you can guess accurately that has a level 1 construct. And if you have a much longer name, like the example we had, like application load balanced function service, something like that, you can guess very accurately that it's a level 3 construct because it has a lot of things already put together. It's a pattern, a whole kind of architecture that's already put together for you to deploy at once. And back to our own what they call this thing, tutorial. So this is a construct, yes, and we're initializing this construct here. You can see that it is initialized the way we said constructs are always initialized. So we passed in the scope of this construct. This function construct is going to be deployed within the scope of this our CDK stack, which is also a construct. They follow the same initialization because it's the same constructor that they have. They are all constructs. So the scope of our function is this, our CDK stack, and the ID of our function is hello world function. So when we deploy this in our AWS console, when we're looking at the different resources, we will see hello world function. This is the identifier for this this resource that is being deployed. And then we have the props. You can see this bracket here. Come in. Let me see where it stops. Yeah, it stops here. So this here are all variables that is required in initializing this function. So when we go to the function documentation, you will see, okay, the variables that are required for you to put values for them, the ones that are optional, maybe you want to customize how your function works, and then when you are using that resource, when you're using that construct here, you have to pass the required ones, and then you can tweak as you want with the optional ones. So you want to have your Lambda runtime. This one is any supported Node.js runtime because we are working with a TypeScript function. If I'm using a Python function, of course, my value here will be different. The documentation has the available runtimes that you can work with in Lambda, yes. And here is the handler. So handler tells you the entry points for your Lambda function. We'll be going down and we'll be seeing it. So your handler, you need to declare where your handler is, how to start your handler or whatever. It's basically where your function is, where your function starts, where your function can be found. And this is the code from our Lambda function. So there are different ways you can add your code. You could put it in a file and then you reference the file. This one is Lambda code from inline. So you are declaring your Lambda function with the code inline for your Lambda handler. And here, this is the TypeScript function that does the whole, when you call, it's going to return the status code 200, and also the body is going to have the JSON response of hello world. So this is basically a very simple serverless function that is written inline in our code here. I told you could have different functions that you deploy, and then have different what they call this thing, endpoints mapping to them, and you expose them, and you just be calling those endpoints and using it in your application. Or you can build a whole API gateway, all of these different things that you want to work with. But this is very simple. When you call this function, it just returns this every time, and that's all. And so I'm going to yes, and now we can continue. So we have updated our Lambda function to have all the things it needs to be initialized, the code and everything. And here they're explaining the things I just explained about the Lambda function. The props, when you check the documentation, you can always find the props, the properties, or the parameters that you need to initialize any constructs that you're working with. And we need to define the lambda function URL. So we would use this add function URL helper method of the function construct, and then we will create a CloudFormation output. So okay, yes, I think maybe I forgot to mention this one when I said I have never used a level 1 construct before. We always use this CFN output because I don't know, I've not seen, I think this is the only level 1 construct that I use. Okay, let me not say that in case I'm wrong again. But when you run your code, maybe you want it to output some values that it got from your deployment for your own use in your local environment. You can define all the outputs you want from your deployment in CFN output construct, and it would give you the result. So imagine now we're deploying this lambda function. We want endpoints that we can use. We want the URL that we can use, and we deploy it, and that's it. We probably need to go to log into our AWS account to go and check lambda AWS service and see the function that is there and check which URL. That's what we want to avoid, having to log into AWS console to do a lot of things. So you can declare the CFN output to retrieve the value of the URL that was just deployed and print it out for you in your terminal when you deploy. So yes, we're going to now proceed with adding the function URL and putting the CFN output for us to use. Okay, so here we have already inside our CDK stack, the function resource is already defined. Now we need to define the URL resource. Can you see already that we are having more than one resource within the same stack? I hope you notice it also, because you can deploy everything you can think of inside one stack, but it's not a good practice to deploy everything you can think of inside one stack. Your stack should encompass, like, let's say, one unit of deployment that works together, that they need each other. All the resources here need each other to work well. I think of it like this thing of single responsibility part of, I think I'm going to computer science thing ish now, but think of single responsibility principles when you are deploying a CDK stack. Everything in this stack that I'm putting together needs to focus on achieving one goal together. We are trying to deploy our Hello CDK stack here, and we need our lambda function. Our lambda function needs a lambda function URL for us to access it, and then we need the output from our lambda function deployment, and everything should be in one stack, not different stacks, or putting some random other project you want inside the same stack that you named Hello CDK stack. That's not best practice. We don't want you to do that. So yes, we're going to go ahead and define our lambda function URL resource and our CloudFormation output. So we'll look at it when we paste this in our code here. That should be after our function. Yeah, that should be here. So look at this. This is just a function that you are running, or a helper method that you are running on what we just declared. We initialized our function, and then we're adding a function URL to it. So when you look at the function resource in CDK documentation, you will see all the things you can do with it. That's all I'm going to say. In your documentation, you see all the parameters that you need, all the functions, all the methods that is attached to that class that you can run, and all that. So authentication type for our URL is no authentication, so it's open and you can access it publicly. The output that we are declaring is our function URL output, and we put the value of that output as my function URL.url. So now here's the beauty of everything we're working on in infrastructure as code. We are able to reference resources and build these things without even deploying them yet. So when they are deployed, they would be the values will be plugged into where it is required it to work, and I don't need to deploy this one, finish first, then come back, take the value, use it to work in the next one, and then deploy it, run it, and then come back. You can put everything referencing the values, the variables, the methods, the definitions that you've already put in your code, and they should work well together, everything being equal. Okay, we are making a lot of progress. Now we have this here. To make it simple, I told you our URL is without authentication. There are different let's say ways you can deploy your serverless application. Don't use this as your production grade solution. You may want to check particular best practices for serverless deployment or anything like that. But we will now be synthesizing our CloudFormation template. Remember, I said CDK synthesizes to CloudFormation behind the scene. That's why you see, CloudFormation stacks, and then you hear CDK stacks. So a CDK stack would be one CloudFormation stack behind the scene. If you have 3 CDK stacks, you have 3 CloudFormation stacks behind the scene. Okay, so now we're going to run CDK synth in our terminal, and we should, let me save this. We try sudo, and okay, we're going to run CDK synth in our terminal. So CDK synth, but I will be running sudo CDK synth because of my unique situation. Okay, we have our result. As you can see, it has put together a CloudFormation template. Not very pretty. I'm never going to be trying to explain this, but you can see resources. When you see the stats, it's all CDK CDK translated to CloudFormation from here on. Hello world function service, all the blah blah blah, hello world function. You see the type is in AWS Lambda function, and then basically everything that we did now prepared in CloudFormation for deployment. Yes, so you can have a look at that, and we can continue. This is the output that we got. I showed you in my own terminal. Let's not look at it. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. But if you're interested, you can look at it. It's okay for you to get familiar with CloudFormation templates. But I would repeat that you wouldn't be working so closely with it. I won't be teaching you CloudFormation. But you can look at it, understand it, and know what it entails. All the things we defined there. See the runtime we wrote. See it here. It automatically maps the depends on for the ones that it can infer from the way your application is written, but at times it cannot infer your depends on, and you would have to declare explicitly which stacks or which resources depend on the other. So we define a single level 2 construct, and then you can see it's a whole bogus CloudFormation template for it. And we're moving on to the actual deployment of our CDK stack. So all you need to run is CDK deploy. Very, very simple, right? I think I like how intuitive all the commands are. CDK list, CDK bootstrap, CDK deploy, CDK synth. I mean, even CDK destroy is basically CDK init. I mean, they are very intuitive. So CDK deploy, we're going to run that now. CDK deploy. Okay, my unique case. Sudo CDK deploy. I hope you're not in the same situation I'm in. I need to change the permissions, like the owner of this directory I'm in. Okay, yeah, this looks prettier than what we saw in the CloudFormation template. So it started synthesizing, of course, and you can see the updates on what's going on. It's reminding you there are going to be changes in your IAM service, identity and access management. So it always has to remind you, like, there's going to be some permissions created and all that. You may have seen it in the CloudFormation template we were looking at, but essentially the Lambda function needs permissions to do some things. And you can see all of them are different. This IAM policy changes. So these are manage policy, AWS Lambda basic execution role is going to be attached to your Lambda role that is being created and all of that. So do you wish to deploy these changes? Yes. I'm typing Y and then I'm going to deploy it. It's deploying. While it's deploying, you actually should be able to see it in your AWS console. Let me see if I can catch it before it goes. Okay, I'm probably going to be too late, but it's going to be there either ways. CloudFormation. So you want to go to CloudFormation, you can search it here just to be sure that you have it. CloudFormation, and you should see the ongoing deployment here. Hello CDK stack. Can you see it? We're going to open it, create in progress. That's the status. Let me close this part. So there are 2 stacks we have totally in our CloudFormation. CDK toolkit, that was for our Bootstrap. You should always have that. And then Hello CDK stack. It's completed deployment now. We can see everything that went on in the deployment, in the events. You see the steps, all the things that it tried to deploy in your application, your CDK application. And you see the resources that it created. It created CDK metadata. I mean, that's nothing special. And then in our hello world function, we had a service role that was created for our Lambda function. We had the function URL that was created. We had the invoke function URL, like its permission to. And here we can see the Lambda function that was deployed itself. So let's see it. Okay, this is our Lambda function. Hello stack. Like, we didn't need to come to the console to deploy any of this. See our index.handler. It's here. This is what is going to run when this is what is going to run when the Lambda function is invoked. And now I told you that the handler definition in the function was telling where to find the entry points to your Lambda function. So index.handler was where it was, and here we have it. So when it runs, it's going to return 200 and this body, like this text. So it should also be here with everything working fine. Here you can see the output that is created separately. This is the function URL. I mean, hello world. Isn't this pretty? See, this is the response from it. But remember I said whatever you declare in your output, you should also have it in your terminal results. See it here. When we ran this thing, we had the outputs. Can you see what I'm highlighting here? This is the output, and this is the ARN of the stack. You'll be seeing ARN a lot for Amazon services. It means Amazon resource name, Amazon resource number, or something like that. But it's the identifier. It's a unique identifier globally for the resource that you are referencing in Amazon. Every Amazon resource has it, even down to the IAM rows, the S3 buckets, anything that you are working with that is in AWS has an ARN. So we have deployed our Lambda function, we deployed our CDK project, and let's wrap up. So we have gotten our result. I opened it in the browser, but you can also run it locally in your terminal to get this result. You use the curl command and then you put the URL that you have here. Let me copy it. Okay, no, not this one. Is it this one? Let me see. It should be it. yeah, this is the result output. So Ctrl to C. Let me run curl this. Yeah, you have the result. So I ran curl on the URL that we have, and I have hello world result. That's all. You can make changes in your application as you want. Like you can have it do something else. You can have a whole command like, okay, you put and you check some compute, I don't know, 4 plus 4, 2 plus 2, depends on whatever you want. You can change this, play around, and see how the response changes from the results you get. Don't forget, if you change the code in your terminal, make sure to run CDK deploy again, and the function is going to be updated in the console environment on AWS. And when you run curl or you open that page, it should give you the new result that you expect. So there we have it. We have been able to deploy our application. You can also check CDK diff before you deploy it. This one gives you the changes that is going to like the current changes from what you have and what is currently deployed in your environment. So you can try this before running CDK deploy on any change you make, and you would have a result like this. So it's a way to preview your changes. When you run the CDK diff command, it shows you the difference, what is deployed and what you have currently in your editor. Now to delete the application, we can just run CDK destroy. I like this part, because when we did the other building with console or CLI, I had to go manually in my environment to open every service. Like I had to take note of all the services we deployed so that I can go back to delete them one after the other, because if I forget one, maybe it will incur cost for me. But this one, you can just run CDK destroy, and everything that you put, okay, I need to put sudo, everything that you put in your AWS environment is going to come tumbling down. Trust me, without anything left behind, not even the permission, not even the user role that is going to be left behind. Everything is going to be deleted. You won't even find the stack in your environments. Everything has to go. Everything has to go. If you want to find it, I can show you where to find it, but by default you wouldn't see it there again. Here we have, let's go to cloud formation. This is the last thing we're doing. Once we delete it, we are out of here. Bis next okay, till next week. Okay, so you see the stack is gone. It has disappeared. Wow, nice, right? So yes, hello CDK stack destroyed. And okay, so you can view your deleted ones here also. By default it shows only the active ones, but if you want, you can see the old ones, the deleted ones. It looks like it disappeared, but it was here somewhere. See here, delete complete. So thank you for joining us today. I am excited for what we'll be building next week. We'll be going deeper in CDK, deploying actual projects, not just a sample Lambda function. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye bye.